We're going to talk about really knowing God's will in your life. And I think the answer is going to be both true, but maybe really annoying. Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and this is Ascension Presents. How do you know at the end of the day, how do you have foolproof, total confirmation that the inspiration you're feeling is God's will? The answer is because it actually happens. You might feel so profoundly called to become a priest or to become a religious, or you might be called to a certain type of business or company or nonprofit, or you might feel so called to maybe move somewhere or to marry a particular person or to be married. And I come across people who feel this so deeply. This is the number one thing that they are sure of in their life. And then it doesn't happen. And then the experience is one of really profound confusion. This was what God was saying. Did it? And it didn't happen. Was he fooling me? Was he tricking me? Did I not hear him? Can I not hear God at all? And it can just really be disorienting. In a Catholic worldview and perspective, discernment is never purely subjective, especially the big type of stuff. There's a level of discernment which is not just subjective. It's not just what I feel and I'm convinced of. There's a communal dimension to that. And this is a Catholic worldview. With this inspiration, we're going to be called to a threefold obedience. Okay, there's an obedience to what God is personally asking us in prayer. If we feel God is calling us to something, there's an obedience to that. There's an obedience to rightful authority. And then thirdly, God's going to speak to us, and therefore there's going to be obedience simply to reality. So the first one is this, if you feel God calling you to something, we're called to respond to it. If you feel like there's an inspiration in prayer to acts of charity, to a greater conversion, to leaving things behind, to reaching out to somebody, to a deeper prayer life, to particularly maybe sharing a word of encouragement to somebody you meet. If you're feeling called to marriage, if you're feeling called to a particular mission or ministry, if you're feeling called to a particular vocation, we want to respond to it. We can, through sin or through disobedience, just say no to God. God's going to adjust, he's going to respond to it, but there is a real dimension to that. But if God's calling us to it, we want to respond. But we also respond and we hold these things with a slightly loose grip. There's a sense I kind of would have this, I feel strongly that God is calling me to this, and so I'm going to make the right action steps. But at times, these invitations or these action steps are going to involve other parties. You might feel called to seminary, and by that you feel a certain desire to it or to religious life. And so you're going to make the steps. That call we hold lightly, I'm following this, I think this is it. And we can't really go much deeper than that until the church confirms it. There's a part for those who are going to be ordained where the church calls them, they receive the call. And it's you are chosen, you will be ordained. Similarly, the call to a religious institute is confirmed when that religious order says yes. So there's this rightful authority part to it. Also, you might feel called to marry a particular man or woman. They have to say yes. You know that this is God's call in your life when you exchange marriage vows and you get married. You might feel called to a particular job or something like that. But again, you have to get hired. And so the thing is, if we don't get accepted to seminary, or we don't get ordained, or we don't marry the person we want to, or we don't get the job we want, we actually have to trust that God is working in those details. We have confidence that we can hear God's voice, but there is a part as well where it's I'm pretty confident this is what God is saying, so we follow as best we can. But then we also have to trust that God's going to shepherd us through the details, and often he shepherds us most directly through closed doors. That's my experience, at least. It's often it's through the closed doors that God is most concretely and clearly taking us to a particular direction. And so we have to trust God with those details. And this last level of obedience is just to reality. I could potentially feel a deep conviction that I'm called to be, the next Brother Isaiah, the next Matt Maher, the next big Catholic musician. I can't sing. I might feel called to be in the NBA, but like, that's just not going to happen at this point in my life. There isn't this obedience to reality. In all of this, like obedience is ultimately possible when we have the confidence that God speaks, that God is at work, and also God is trustworthy. That God is trustworthy in these details. And I echoed it, and you can go back to it again with the quote from Mother Teresa. Like Mother Teresa felt so deeply called to start a religious order. And so she responded. She was obedient to, if you will, the inspiration. Then as well, like she was obedient and she waited for rightful authority to say yes. And then she went forward. So friends, again, this might feel a little bit frustrating or annoying, but also maybe sometimes the fullness of the truth is frustrating and annoying, and I get because it's not maybe as clear cut or black and white as you might want it to be. But this is really ultimately how we know what God wants in our life, because when we follow through, it actually happens. And so as God speaks to us and he inspires us, we want to be obedient, we want to say yes, but then also there's the obedience, this Catholic, authentic, human obedience to rightful authority and to reality. And so when rightful authority and reality both also say yes, and the thing actually happens, you enter into the vocation, you have the wedding, you get the job, etc. Then we can have confidence. Then we know that this was ultimately God's will. We trade confidence in him, but with a loose grip and sort of a disposition of trust and surrender to the Lord as the details unfold. Hopefully this is helpful and can help make sense of some things that you're experiencing or have experienced. And yeah, it's not to be dismissive of the pain of the no, but also to have this authentic Catholic trust and confidence that God is at work in the details, and that in the closed door, in the no, there's still a fullness and a richness for what God wants to do in your life. It's just not maybe where you thought. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Remember, we are pilgrims on this earth. Somos peregrinos, poco a poco, little by little. Vamos a llegar. We're going to make it. Bye. I want that phone to not be ringing, but it is ringing. So it's God's will for me to be in here with it ringing. Shh.